There's
Correct.
no data suggesting that men and women train differently. Even when we talk about things like cycle syncing, where women will train differently depending on where they are in
That's
their
what I was
menstrual
going to ask you
cycle.
next. Let's talk about that.
There have been multiple studies that have looked directly at this. Some really, really good ones. Stuart Phillips has done some. Dr. Lauren has done some. These are people that I highly respect and am friends with. And there is not a single study that suggests that cycle syncing is something that's beneficial.
Now, here's something I want to hit on with this. Based on all of the data that you're speaking about that I've looked into, I completely agree with that. Going back to it depends, I've had majority of my clients are women. I've had many female clients who we adjust their training based on where they are in their cycle, not because of their cycle or because of what the data says, but because how they tell me they feel.
That's the thing that I always get into whenever I get into these conversations. If you've looked at any of the reels or anything like that I put out there, I'm going to 100% agree with you on this.
Yeah.
This is a thing that is not gender specific.
Yeah.
And that's what I really want to point out about this. And I think that you're agreeing with me right now, but I think that you probably agree. When we talk about programming, whether we're considering the person's menstrual cycle or whether we're considering anything else, when we're talking
schedule,
about
whatever.
anything else.
Yeah.
There's only a couple things that you would change per person, and it's irrespective of gender. You're going to program based off of a person's goals.
Yep.
You're going to program off of preferences, and you're going to program off of autoregulation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, autoregulation is what you're getting at here, or at least you can tell me if I'm wrong when we talk about it.
Cybernetic periodization. It's like you're changing their training based on how you feel.
Yeah, 100%. And men will do this too.
Yep.
And so I like to point this out, not as like this is a competition, but just to say what you do doesn't change based on your gender. Say you go into a part of your cycle and you're having the worst cramps in the world and you're not sleeping. Well, you probably shouldn't be doing a 1-rep max squat the next day.
Exactly. Yep.
If a guy had just pulled an all-nighter for whatever reason, he's maybe a doctor and they had an all-nighter or was on call or whatever it is, you're going to not go out and do that. So you're going to auto-regulate. Now, the important thing about this auto-regulation process is that you are taking it based off of what you're experiencing. You're not doing it because a watch told you to do it. You're not doing it because, because it's week 2 of your cycle or whatever it is. You're doing it based off of how you feel. Now, you will do this based off of how you feel no matter where you are in the menstrual cycle.
Yes. Yep.
And this is super important because if you are saying in most traditional cycle syncing situations, they'll say, okay, well, for 2 weeks, you're really strong. And then for 2 weeks, you're not so strong. One, what are you doing to determine whether or not you're in that phase? Because it typically takes blood work to really identify that phase. Two, when we are doing it this way, it's almost like a defeatist attitude because it's like, okay, well, for these next 2 weeks, I'm not going to be strong. So I'm going to feel weak. Well, is that a self-fulfilling prophecy? According to the research, it is. And so if we go into this knowing that this is not going to be largely influenced by your cycle, you're going to feel different. So the challenge that you feel might be different. The experience might be different. That doesn't mean you're actually weaker.
Correct.
And so that's what we see in the research is when they tell women, hey, suck it up, push it through, they will actually do just fine. So you need to take this on a case-by-case basis. And if you've had, your sitter didn't show and you weren't able to sleep and you're stressed at work, make an adjustment.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you need to push yourself to your ability in that any single day and be okay with that. Don't look at this as a self-fulfilling prophecy of doom every 2 weeks. You're going to lose 2 weeks every month for a year or multiple years in a row. You're essentially giving up your progress.
Yep.
You know, and so this is an absolutely ridiculous way to look at this, but it's a really cool thing for influencers that want to sell programs that are based off of this type of thing.
Yeah,
so this
exactly
is,
right.
and this is where we kind of get those polarizing responses of just don't fucking follow this. And like you said, that's very black and white.
Yeah.
But that's not to say don't follow autoregulation, as everybody should be doing.
Yeah.
When we say, hey, look, the way that you train, you set up training protocols, the way that you set up nutrition protocols is the same between the two. It's 100% same between the two because you're going to be doing that for men too.
Yes.
And I think that that's kind of that message that gets lost. And by you pointing that out, I think that's a very important thing for you to point out.
Yeah.
Because even what I had said before could be misconstrued as these types of things don't happen, but the experience is very real.
How you feel always matters.
It makes a huge difference.
It's funny, whether it's a male client or a female client, I've had male clients and female as well, but I'm gonna use the male in this example, who they travel for work. Huge part of their month is travel. And they often have a predictable monthly travel schedule. Maybe they live on the East Coast and then they travel to the West Coast, and it's pretty predictable. And we know that generally speaking, that on certain days they're going to be more tired from travel, and other days they're going to be more rested because they're not traveling. On certain days they're going to have a shorter commute to the gym. Other days they're going to have a longer commute to the gym. Mm-hmm. Some days they're going to have dinners out with the company. Other times they're going to be able to create it on their own and have a more nutritious, lower calorie meal. Based on their schedule and how they feel, we will adjust their training. If something happens where they don't feel like they thought they would feel, then they could go harder in the gym or not as hard in the gym. Yeah. And same thing happens with women, where regardless of where they are in their cycle, going back to what you were talking about, having a journal and a diary, or for me, like the experiment, just keeping track of how you feel at certain times. I will very often with women, they'll notice that at a certain phase, oftentimes the week leading up to their period, they get very hungry. So oftentimes we will increase calories for that week leading up to their period, because that gives them more leeway. And then during the later week, if they're not as hungry, they can reduce their calories. This isn't for every woman, but this is for many women. And so paying attention to how they feel, being aware of it throughout the month, whether you're a man or a woman, based on your schedule and how your body's responding to your schedule and what's happening to your body, it's only helpful. But we can't take it to the extreme of we need to cycle sync and everything needs to be simply because of this is the phase that you're in. Because not only women aren't small men and men aren't big women, but also not all women are the same. Just because you're the same gender doesn't mean you respond the same to the cycle or to the same training, to the same volume, to the same intensity. You were talking about Carol and Bridget or whomever is in the cul-de-sac. It's like
it's always Deborah.
It's Deborah and the whatever, right? It's like two women aren't the same, two men aren't the same. We're all different, and we're all going to respond differently based on your battery, based on what's going on in your life, based on your experiences. It's let's treat them as an individual, not based on where you are in your cycle.